Hey guys, it's Sophia, and I know I kind of tweeted about it. If you guys saw it, you know that today's 5 on Friday is a bit more serious, and I don't necessarily believe in trigger warnings per se, but I am going to be talking about sexual assault and some of my experiences with it. And this is kind of by all the things that are going on. You might have seen the Me Too hashtag that's been going around, and I apologize for my crazy car surroundings. We're traveling today, so I still wanted to do it, but I had to kind of do it on a go. The reason why I think it's important that I share my story is because the more that we talk about it, the more that we can be comfortable seeking help. And honestly, no one's alone. I mean, we're not alone in this. I'm trying to get the lens flare out of there. And so I want to talk about what happened to me. I didn't think it was going to be as difficult as it is. So I want to start with the first instance of sexual harassment that I ever remember. And I was young. I wasn't even a teenager. I had pigtails, clearly an underage girl. And I was going to dinner with my family, so I had two adults with me, my mom and my dad. And a gentleman said something to the effect of, I would use those handlebars to ride her like a bike. Clearly underage. I don't know why on earth any grown man would say that, and he said it to another man who was with him, and they laughed. My dad didn't hear exactly what they said, but he did know that they said something and kind of gave them a glare, and they backed off. But that is my first true instance of feeling uncomfortable by being who I am. And I was never a small girl per se. I was very tall for my age until high school. I stopped. I always looked mature for my age, but again, clearly underage, just pigtails going to dinner. And that kind of set the tone for the rest of my life. Near constant. I mean, there's not a single job that I've had that someone hasn't said something to me. There isn't I can't think of a season in my life. I can't think of a month in my life that I've gone without being harassed in some way, shape, or form. But whenever I was at a convention, and I'm not going to use names out of respect for other people, and I'm not going to tell you my assailant's name because I don't believe in making a-holes famous. I was at an anime convention in Dallas, and I went to the dance. And if you guys ever go to conventions, they always have some sort of dance or ball or rave or whatever. It's sanctioned by the convention. It has security. It's usually not that dark. It's usually not that dangerous. And I got separated from my group, and it wasn't a big deal. I was just dancing on the dance floor. It was not a big deal. And a guy approached me. Now, I do want to preface this with, throughout the convention, I had seen this guy. I had never spoken to him. We shared glances occasionally. I thought he was attractive. Again, we never spoke. He never came up to me before then. But at the dance, he approached me. And whenever I say approached, I mean, he came up behind me, put one hand on my throat and squeezed so hard I had to lean my head back in order to be able to breathe, and then took his other hand and put it square on my vagina. Just grabbed a whole hunk of cooch. And I am not the kind of person who stays quiet. I am not the kind of person who is scared. And I was so shocked. I was so appalled that it took me a few seconds to say anything, to do anything. And he said, "Hey there, I've seen you around the convention. Do you have a hotel room here?" And I said, "No," even though that was a lie, but I didn't want him to know. I said, "No," and I said, "You need to remove your hands. I'm not that kind of girl." he squeezed harder with both hands and said, "I think you can be that kind of girl." At which point I, very muffled, told him that if he did not let go of me, that I was going to physically harm him. And he laughed. I don't think anyone who has ever heard, like, it's a laugh that is just, it's inhuman. It doesn't make sense to me that he thought that was a joke, or that was funny, or that he somehow had power over me in this instance. And so, having taken many, many years of self-defense and many years of martial arts, thank you, all my previous senseis, Mr. James and Sensei Williams and Mr. Robert, one of the things that we focused on in those classes was me being assaulted, because it was normal. And that's a hard thing to say, that assault for a woman is normal. And so I had to be prepared. And I did what I had to do. I was able to put enough space between us. I swung my head so hard that I broke his nose. And he ran off. And I had his blood in my hair. And I didn't move. I was so scared that if I ran to my room, that he would follow me. I was terrified that he would find me, and I wasn't with my friends at that exact moment. And so I stayed on the dance floor and I pretended like everything was okay, because I couldn't at that moment. Like, I actually couldn't. Whenever I thought it was safe, I reported him to con security, and they called the police, and the convention handled it perfectly. I wrote a report and I waited to press charges. And the scariest thing in the world was whenever I found out that this guy worked at the convention. He was a security guy for the convention, which meant that he also had literally access to all of my information. He could find out my name, he could find out my phone number, he could find out my address where I got my convention ticket sent to. And I was so upset, because I thought that I was secure. I thought I was fine. And then I found out that this guy was in basically a position of power in this convention. And I was livid. And I was alone. I didn't have friends to help me at that exact moment. I couldn't get a hold of anybody. And once the police are done filling out their report, they don't hold your hand. Eventually, Tony, who is now my husband, did find me, and we talked it out, and he stayed with me, and he stayed up all night with me to make sure that I wasn't scared. And I definitely took comfort in that. But it still is nerve-wracking to me, because this is a man who knew that he was in a position that he could manipulate it. And who knows? I don't know whatever happened to that report. Later on, the police did contact me and basically said that there wasn't anything they could do. They couldn't find this guy to press charges, and it is what it is. But the convention had found him, and as far as I know, that they were working with the police later after that whole situation. And I know that his nose was broken because he reported it to the convention. He reported it to the convention hall. I don't feel guilty for breaking that asshole's nose. I would have broken more. And so whenever people talk about, oh, if you say nothing, oh, if you do nothing, you don't know what to do. And sometimes you aren't lucky. Sometimes you don't have the support. And sometimes you don't have the strength. Sometimes you weren't raised to fight back. And I am very lucky. I was taught that no one touches you. And if it means that you physically defend yourself, that's okay. And that's what I did. I am very fortunate that it didn't get worse. That he was a wuss and ran off, that he didn't fight with me, that it was in a public place. And if you want to share your story, I say do it. I think there's more people. I think people need to realize too that it's not uncommon whenever we talk about, sexual assault happens. I think people don't realize how quickly it happens. This guy probably thought that because I was clearly attracted to him that he had some right to my body, and he didn't. And I don't care how many Google eyes I give you. You don't get to touch me if I don't want you to touch me. And I'll break every bone in your body. And every woman who has ever had to defend themselves, do not feel guilty for it, ever. Ever, ever, ever. The harm that was inflicted on you is terrible. And while I do not suggest violence as the answer, I do suggest self-preservation. And if you are not willing to talk about your story, that's okay. You owe it to nobody. Deal with it how you need to deal with it. So yeah, that's it. Whew, that was longer than 5, and that was actually harder than I thought it was going to be, and I didn't cry, so that's good. But I hope someone somewhere is hearing this and they realize it's not okay that it happened to you, and we can do better, but it's okay because you got sisters and brothers. All right, hopefully you have a great weekend, and we'll talk about something significantly less serious next Friday. Love you guys.